I want to be honest with you from the beginning. Hanoi is a remarkable city. The old quarter streets have barely changed in 100 years. The lakes are beautiful. The food, pho, bun cha, egg coffee, banh mi, is some of the best in Asia. The history is everywhere, and it is genuine. The temples, the colonial architecture, the Hoan Kiem Lake adorned with local residents doing Tai Chi on the shore. These are real pleasures that no honest traveler can dismiss. I am not here to tell you Hanoi is a bad city. It is not. But I spent serious time there researching it as a place to retire. I walked the streets, I talked to expats who had made the move. I looked at apartments, checked healthcare options, watched the traffic, breathed the air. And at the end of it, I made a decision. Not Hanoi. This video is about why, and it is about what I chose instead, and why I think those alternatives serve retirees significantly better. If you are researching Vietnam for retirement, and Hanoi is on your list, watch this before you book anything. Let me start with what Hanoi gets right, because fairness matters, and Hanoi gets a lot right. The culture is the strongest argument for the city. Hanoi is Vietnam's capital and its cultural heart. The museums are the best in the country. The Temple of Literature, Vietnam's first university, established in 1076, is one of the most quietly beautiful places I have visited anywhere in Asia. The Ho Chi Minh Mausoleum complex is historically significant in a way that demands respect regardless of your politics. The Vietnam Museum of Ethnology is world-class by any standard. For someone who wants to spend their retirement years genuinely engaging with one of the most complex and fascinating cultures in the world, Hanoi offers more depth than any other Vietnamese city. The food culture reinforces this. Hanoi's cuisine is distinct from southern Vietnamese cooking in ways that matter. The pho here is cleaner, less sweet, more focused on the quality of the broth than the quantity of add-ins. Bun cha, grilled pork patties served with noodles and a light dipping broth, was famously the meal that Anthony Bourdain ate with Barack Obama in a small Hanoi restaurant. That scene went around the world for a reason. The food is extraordinary. Egg coffee, thick, sweet, almost dessert-like, served in small ceramic cups, was invented in Hanoi and is still best here. Sitting in a tiny cafe on a narrow old quarter street, drinking egg coffee while watching the morning traffic below, is one of the genuinely irreplaceable experiences Vietnam offers. The old quarter itself is a walkable neighborhood of remarkable density and character. 36 streets, each historically named after the trade it once housed. Silk Street, Paper Street, Tin Street. The trades have changed, but the street patterns and the architecture, narrow tube houses 4 and 5 stories tall, French colonial facades, Buddhist shrines tucked into shop fronts, remain. For the first days in Hanoi, the old quarter is mesmerizing. And then, slowly, something else becomes apparent. The problem with living here, there is a difference between visiting a city and living in one. Visiting Hanoi, the old quarter is fascinating. The narrow streets, the density of the architecture, the motorbikes navigating impossible gaps. It is visually extraordinary and constantly stimulating. Living in Hanoi, those same qualities become something different. The old quarter is loud, not occasionally loud, consistently relentlessly loud. Motorbike engines, horns, construction that seems to happen in every direction simultaneously. Vendors with speakers mounted on their bikes announcing their goods as they move through the streets. At 7 in the morning, the noise begins. It does not significantly stop until late at night. For a visit of 3 or 4 days, this is part of the experience. For retirement of months or years, it is a different proposition entirely. The traffic deserves its own section. Hanoi's traffic is not the organized chaos of Ho Chi Minh City, which has its own logic once you learn it. Hanoi's traffic feels less predictable, more compressed, more aggressive. The city's street layout was not designed for the volume of motorbikes that now use it. The old quarter streets are too narrow for the traffic they carry. Sidewalks are routinely occupied by parked motorbikes, forcing pedestrians into the road. For younger travelers, navigating this is part of the adventure. For retirees, particularly those with mobility issues, joint problems, or reduced reaction times, Hanoi's streets are genuinely challenging. Crossing a main road in the old quarter requires nerve that not everyone has at 65 or 70. The constant vigilance required to move safely through the city is exhausting in a way that accumulates over days and weeks. I watched older Vietnamese residents navigate this with the ease of lifelong practice. I watched older Western visitors navigate it with visible anxiety. The difference in physical confidence was stark. The air quality problem. This is the issue that I kept coming back to, the one that more than anything else shaped my conclusion about Hanoi as a retirement destination. Hanoi has a serious air quality problem. The city regularly records air quality index readings that fall into the unhealthy range, not just for sensitive groups, but for the general population. On bad days, a visible haze sits over the city. The smell of exhaust is present at street level throughout the day. On the worst days, the mountains visible from the city's outskirts disappear entirely behind pollution. This is not a new problem. Hanoi has been grappling with air quality for years. The combination of heavy motorbike and vehicle traffic, construction activity, industrial zones on the city's periphery, and weather patterns that trap pollution in the valley during certain seasons produces conditions that health professionals consistently rate as a concern for long-term residents. For a healthy 30-year-old spending a month in Hanoi, the air quality is an inconvenience. For a 65 or 70-year-old spending years there, particularly someone with any respiratory history, any cardiovascular concerns, any immune system considerations, it is a genuine health risk that compounds over time. I spoke with a retired British doctor who had spent 2 years in Hanoi before relocating to Danang. He was direct about it. He said, "I enjoyed Hanoi enormously, but I am 68 years old. I could feel the air quality in my chest by the end of the first year." Moving was not a difficult decision. This single factor, air quality, eliminates Hanoi from serious consideration for many retirees, particularly those who have spent their working lives making health-conscious decisions and are not interested in undoing that work in retirement. The weather Hanoi has 4 seasons. This is unusual for Vietnam, which is predominantly tropical, and it is one of the features that some people find appealing. But those 4 seasons deserve honest description. Summer in Hanoi is hot and humid. Temperatures reach 37 to 39 degrees Celsius, with humidity that makes the felt temperature significantly higher, the kind of heat that limits outdoor activity to the early morning and late evening. Autumn is genuinely beautiful. October and November are arguably the best months in Hanoi. Mild temperatures, lower humidity, clear days. If you are visiting Hanoi for the first time, go in autumn. Winter is cool, cooler than most people expect from Vietnam. From December through February, temperatures drop to 12 to 16 degrees Celsius. Not freezing, but damp and grey in a way that surprises visitors accustomed to the tropical image of Southeast Asia. The cold is not severe, but it is persistent. Hanoi in January is overcast, humid, and cool in a way that feels more like Northern Europe than Southeast Asia. Spring brings rain. March and April are characterized by drizzle and mist, what the Vietnamese call the drizzle season. That can last for weeks. For retirees who specifically moved to Southeast Asia for warm weather, a reliable sunny climate, and the ability to be outdoors comfortably throughout the year, Hanoi's climate is a significant disappointment for roughly half the year. The cost of living, higher than you expect. Hanoi is cheaper than Ho Chi Minh City. But it is not as cheap as many people assume when they first research Vietnam retirement. The Old Quarter and the expat popular neighborhoods Tay Ho, Ba Dinh, Cao Gai have seen significant rent increases over the past 5 years as the expat community has grown and domestic demand from Vietnamese professionals has increased. A decent furnished 1-bedroom apartment in a good Hanoi neighborhood currently costs $250 to $400 per month. In Tay Ho, the lakeside neighborhood most popular with Western expats, good apartments run $350 to $500. These prices are still significantly below Western cities, but they are comparable to Danang and more expensive than Dalat, while offering worse air quality, more difficult streets, and a less comfortable climate for much of the year. The value proposition of Hanoi's cost of living becomes less compelling when you factor in the lifestyle trade-offs. You pay similar rent to Danang, you get significantly worse air, you get more difficult streets, you get a colder winter, you get extraordinary culture and food, but culture and food can be enjoyed on extended visits without committing to permanent residence. Who Hanoi is actually right, for I want to be fair here. because Hanoi is absolutely the right choice for certain retirees. If you are deeply interested in Vietnamese history, culture and politics, Hanoi is incomparable. The depth of historical content available in this city, the proximity to important sites, the quality of the cultural institutions, no other Vietnamese city comes close. If you are a writer, a researcher, an academic, or someone whose retirement project involves serious intellectual engagement with Vietnamese culture, Hanoi provides resources and atmosphere that Danang and Dalat simply cannot match. If you are specifically comfortable in urban environments, if you thrive in density, in noise, in the constant stimulation of a major capital city, Hanoi delivers that experience at a fraction of what it would cost in a Western capital. If you are physically active, in good health, have no respiratory concerns, and find urban energy invigorating rather than exhausting, Hanoi is genuinely one of the most interesting cities in Asia to build a life in. But for the majority of retirees I have spoken with, people who prioritize comfort, health, manageable surroundings, outdoor life, and the ability to move through their days without constant vigilance, Hanoi creates friction that the other Vietnamese cities do not. What I chose instead, and why? Let me tell you where I would go instead, and why. For retirees who want urban life with better livability, Ho Chi Minh City. Ho Chi Minh City is larger than Hanoi, louder in certain areas, and more expensive in the most central districts. But it has several significant advantages for retirees. The air quality, while imperfect, is measurably better than Hanoi. The city is more spread out, which means the density is less concentrated in any single area. The international hospital infrastructure is the best in Vietnam. FV Hospital, Vinmec, and several other international standard facilities serve the expat community at costs that remain a fraction of Western healthcare prices. The weather is consistent, hot and humid, yes, but consistently warm rather than cycling through cold grey winters and scorching summers. For people who moved specifically for warm weather, Ho Chi Minh City delivers it reliably. The expat community is larger, more diverse, and more established than in any other Vietnamese city. The social infrastructure for English-speaking retirees, community organizations, language exchanges, sports groups, regular events, is more developed. And crucially, the city's size means you can find your neighborhood. District 7 is quieter and more residential. Binh Tan has a growing expat community at lower prices than District 1. Thu Duc is developing fast with newer infrastructure. Ho Chi Minh City is large enough that the experience of living there depends enormously on which part of it you choose. For retirees who want coastal life, Danang. I have covered Danang extensively on this channel, and my conclusion has not changed. For the combination of modern infrastructure, beach access, manageable city size, good internet, strong expat community, and reasonable cost, Danang remains the strongest all-round retirement choice in Vietnam. The beaches are excellent. The city is navigable. The air quality is significantly better than Hanoi. The weather is warm for most of the year with a manageable rainy season. The healthcare infrastructure, while not matching Ho Chi Minh City, is solid enough for most needs, with Ho Chi Minh City accessible by a 1-hour flight for specialist care. For retirees who want something completely different, Dalat. I made an entire video about Dalat, and the response has been extraordinary. The cool climate, the pine forests, the lake, the French colonial architecture, the extraordinary food market, the coffee culture, and a cost of living that makes even Danang look expensive. Dalat is for retirees who want to slow down completely, who want cool mornings and misty evenings, and a city that operates at a pace that feels genuinely restorative rather than merely bearable. The honest verdict on Hanoi. Hanoi is one of the great cities of Asia. As a place to visit, 2 weeks, a month, even 3 months, it is extraordinary. The culture is deep, the food is magnificent, the history is present in a way that few cities achieve. As a place to retire permanently, it asks more of you than the alternatives. The air quality asks you to accept a health trade-off that gets more significant with age. The traffic asks you to maintain a level of physical alertness that becomes more difficult over time. The climate asks you to accept cold, grey winters that many people move to Southeast Asia specifically to avoid. And it asks all of this while offering comparable or higher costs to cities that make those same trade-offs unnecessary. I did not choose Hanoi, not because it is a bad city, it is not, but because when I compared it honestly to the alternatives were better for the specific things that matter in retirement: comfort, health, climate, ease of daily life. Hanoi is magnificent for 2 weeks. For the rest of your life, I would choose somewhere else. Thanks for watching. If you have lived in Hanoi and disagree with my assessment, I genuinely want to hear from you. Leave a comment with your experience. This video is one perspective, and the full picture needs more voices. And if you want to see my full breakdown of Dalat, Danang, or Ho Chi Minh City as retirement destinations, all 3 videos are already on this channel. See you in the next one. Let me go deeper on something I touched on briefly: the expat community in Hanoi. Because community matters enormously in retirement, and the social landscape of a city can make or break the experience. Hanoi has a well-established expat community. Tay Ho, the West Lake neighborhood, is its center. Restaurants, cafes, international schools, yoga studios, Western supermarkets, and a concentration of foreign residents that has built up over decades of diplomatic and business activity. The community is real and active. There are regular social events, language exchanges, expat Facebook groups with thousands of members, sports leagues, hiking clubs. For a new arrival in Hanoi, the infrastructure to build a social life exists and is accessible. But the Hanoi expat community has a specific character that is worth understanding before you commit to it. It skews younger than the expat communities in Danang or Dalat. The dominant demographic is working-age professionals, diplomats, NGO workers, English teachers, business people with regional roles. Retirees exist in the community, but they are a minority within a minority. This matters because the social activities, the conversations, the rhythms of the community are oriented around people who are working, who are building careers, who have different preoccupations and different schedules than someone in retirement. In Danang, the expat community has a much higher proportion of retirees and long-term slow travelers. The social pace is different. The conversations are different. The shared reference points, healthcare, fixed income, the practical logistics of long-term overseas living are more relevant to the retirement experience. In Dalat, the expat community is smaller but has a high proportion of people who specifically chose the city for its slower pace and lifestyle qualities. The shared values among Dalat's foreign residents create a different kind of community connection. In Hanoi, you can build a social life, but you will likely be building it primarily among people at a different life stage than your own. That is not impossible to navigate, but it is an additional friction that the other cities do not impose. One more practical consideration that rarely appears in retirement abroad content: bureaucracy. Every Vietnamese city requires the same basic administrative management for long-term residents: visa renewals, address registration, the ongoing paperwork of living legally in a foreign country. But in Hanoi, there is an additional layer. As the capital, Hanoi has more government offices, more regulatory activity, more administrative presence than other Vietnamese cities. This sounds like it might make things easier: more offices, more options. In practice, it sometimes means more complexity, more agencies with overlapping jurisdictions, more paperwork requirements, more occasions where the answer to a simple question is you need to go to a different office. Expats in Hanoi consistently report that the administrative experience of living there is slightly more bureaucratically demanding than in Danang or Ho Chi Minh City, cities where the expat community is large enough that the local administration has developed efficient processes for handling foreign resident needs. This is a minor point in the context of everything else, but for retirees who specifically want simplicity, who moved abroad partly to escape the administrative complexity of their home countries, it is worth knowing. Let me end with something that happened on my last morning in Hanoi. I woke up early and walked to Hoan Kiem Lake before the city fully woke up. The lake at 6 in the morning is extraordinary. The mist sits on the water. The Nok Son temple on its small island glows softly through the haze. Elderly Vietnamese men and women practice Tai Chi on the lakeside paths. A woman sells banh mi from a cart near the south end. I sat on a bench for an hour. I bought a banh mi for $1. I watched the city begin its day, and I thought, this is one of the most beautiful urban mornings I have experienced anywhere. I meant it. I still mean it. But I also knew, sitting there, that I was experiencing Hanoi at its best. The cool of the early morning before the heat and the exhaust built up, the quiet before the horns started, the beauty before the density became overwhelming. Every city has a best hour. Hanoi's best hour is extraordinary. The question for retirement is not whether a city has a best hour, it is whether the other 23 hours are livable. For me, for the specific things I need from a place I intend to live for years rather than weeks, the answer in Hanoi was not quite yes, but that hour by the lake, that banh mi, that mist on the water. I will go back for that, just not to stay.